welcome to Know Before You Go, a program of the Dominican Central Province of St. Albert the Great that allows us to take a look ahead at the upcoming weekend's readings. I am Father Jim Marchionda, on sabbatical and living for 3 months in Southern California, where my brothers are living, and I am happy to be with you as we approach the very first Sunday of Lent. Few days after Ash Wednesday, here we are celebrating Lent. Can you believe it? Wasn't it just yesterday that we were wrapping Christmas presents? It's hard to believe that we have already begun this most sacred season, this holy, holy season, a season, as Pope Benedict once said, where Christians all over the world have the opportunity to embrace the absolute certainty of God's love. That's what I feel we are about when we celebrate Lent, the absolute certainty of God's love. And I guess I want to actually give a title to this preaching today, and the title I would want to give to it is Never Give Up on God. If we have the absolute certainty of God's love on one hand, then I want to invite us on the other hand to never give up on God. No matter what we ever have to face, no matter what we ever have to endure, no matter how long we may ever have to endure some of the sufferings that life presents before us. I am coming to you from Santa Clarita, California. It's where my youngest brother David and his wife Lori live. I am spending some time with them in their beautiful backyard, and I intentionally wanted to record here because of this magnificent cross that my brother built. A story that I've shared with you many times in the past is a story of their son Joe, who suffered for 10 years from drug addiction. And as any of you familiar with any kind of addiction know, not only did Joe suffer with drug addiction, but our entire family suffered with his drug addiction for 10 years. During those years and since, my brother goes to Mass daily at the cathedral in downtown Los Angeles. And while he was praying, during Joe's addiction, while he was praying at Mass several days in a row, he kept getting a message from God that he should build a cross. He should build a cross to honor God and to honor Jesus Christ. For 2 years, that idea ruminated in his head and his imagination, and he pictured what he might do. For 2 years, he continued with his wife to suffer the addiction that Joe was going through. And it was following one of Joe's overdoses, one of his stays in intensive care, that my brother decided now is the time. Now is the time to build this cross. And so he took to it and came up with this magnificent piece of art, which is planted in 5 feet of cement. He smiles broadly and says, whoever buys this house is never going to be able to get rid of this cross. Anyway, my friends, it's because of this cross. We are just beginning Lent, but you know we are going to end here. We are going to end with the crucifixion of Jesus. And of course, we know we'll end beyond that with the resurrection. But that this Lenten season, there will be a climax on Good Friday in the cross of Jesus Christ. And I guess I want to focus on that and focus on the idea that we are challenged to never give in to temptation and to never let go of God. The readings for today are magnificent. And the first Sunday of Lent always presents us with the temptations of Jesus in the desert. This year we have the temptations according to the Gospel of St. Mark. And it's very short. It just says Jesus was led into the desert where he was tempted by the devil. There were wild beasts and angels attended to him. Such a short gospel, unlike Matthew and Luke and John, which have stories of the temptations. Matthew and Luke have stories of the temptations of Jesus and talk about his hunger after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, the devil tempting him to turn stones into loaves of bread, the devil tempting him to throw himself off of the parapet of the temple, saying that God would send his angels to rescue him, as it says in the Psalms, tempting him to kneel down and worship him, and he'd give him all the kingdoms of the world. We have all kinds of details of temptations that we know about from the other gospel writers. But Mark just says he was tempted in the desert. And it has made me spend days this week thinking about temptation and all the temptations we consider in our lives, all the temptations that we suffer through and sometimes cave into. But in all of it, I was thinking the primary temptation is the temptation to let go of God. The temptation to think in some of our suffering that God isn't with us, that God no longer hears our prayers. The temptation to not remain close to God because for some reason we think from our suffering it's clear that God is no longer close to us. And nothing could be further from the truth. In the end, what Jesus proved in surviving the temptations was that he refused to let go of the Father. He refused to let go of God. My brother and sister refused to let go of God through 10 years of suffering addiction. And because of that, God helped them to never let go of their son. They never let go of their son because they never let go of God. That's a message for us in all of our suffering, isn't it? Whatever we have to endure, whatever hardships come our way, it's a challenge presented to both you and me to, no matter our suffering, never let go of God. And God will empower us in ways that we can't even imagine to survive the suffering, to transcend the suffering, and to become closer and closer to God in Jesus Christ. As we begin this Lenten journey, I want to invite you to pray, to avoid temptation, of course. May we all avoid caving into temptation. But at the root of that, may we always remember, we will never let go of God. Who never lets go of us, no matter what we suffer. God bless you and your family.